Part 19. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 183. Fan Zijian did not lose the business as Qi Ziyuan hoped, but made an agreement with Mu Yangling to wait for the caravan to come back to see the effect and decide the number of rabbits to be slaughtered. Before that, Fan Zijian hoped that she would raise as many rabbits as possible. After all, he is still unwilling to give up this business that he has worked so hard for so long. And the manager who was sent south by him not only had to find a way to open up business routes, but also to find other business opportunities. Qi Heiran's words made him suddenly enlightened. Since he can't increase his political capital through studying and wooing, then he just accumulate more wealth. At least they don't have to beg for money in the future, which is also an improvement, isn't it? As for what the big cousin said about the lowly businessman, he just pretended he didn't hear it. After Fan Zijian's people went south, they would send him back news after a while. When they arrived at Zhongling Mansion, the steward sent back 2 pieces of black and red sandalwood. The corners of Fan Zijian's mouth turned up slightly after receiving it, and Qi Heiran said, "Who said that the merchant is not good? At least you can easily buy what you want. If this merchant is with the official again, what do you think it will be? Collusion between officials and businessmen." Fan Zijian rolled his eyes at him, and said angrily, "That is the imperial merchant, such as the Shen family." Fan Zijian put the wood away, stood up, and said, "General Yuan can lead the army for decades. Even if the court suppresses him again and again, he will not fall down. The family has half of the credit, and the Shen family can become the #1 imperial merchant in the world from an ordinary wealthy businessman, and General Yuan also has half of the credit. Heiran, what if there is a Shen family behind the big cousin? The eldest brother will definitely be higher than General Yuan, and he may not be able to become a great general." The corner of Fan Zijian's mouth twitched, and he said, "I think so too, so let's work hard towards this goal. Maybe my cousin can really be the general of the world's soldiers and horses. Then I will be the first general under elder brother, and you will be the first army division." The 2 cousins imagined the future, not afraid of the wind flashing their tongues at all. Fan Zijian happily took the embroidery and wood to the Jingxi Yufang frame. Because things were expensive and it was the Qi family's business, the owner of Jingxi Yufang took Fan Zijian and Zhu Guanqi personally with the shopkeeper. The sandalwood is wrapped in silk cloth, and there are only 2 pieces. When you open it, you can smell a faint fragrance of sandalwood. The owner said with a smile, "This wood is good. Mr. Fan has a good method, and he was able to find such a good thing in Xingzhou Mansion. Because emperors and dignitaries like to use sandalwood as coffins, and sandalwood takes a long time to grow, and the number of sandalwood in the country is very limited, so it is difficult to find this thing. Even if there were, most of them were sold to Linen Mansion and other places where the rich and powerful gathered. Now that there are many wars in the north, there are even fewer of these things. Normally, if you can scrape together enough to make a box, it would be great, but now you can find 2 pieces that are not too short to make a screen." Fan Zijian smiled and said, "I'm also lucky, but there are only 2 pieces of wood, so you have to be careful. If something goes wrong, I won't be able to find supplementary sandalwood here." The owner hurriedly said, "Don't worry, Mr. Fan, our master is the best in Quanxin Prefecture. I will let sandalwood and the others do it slowly to ensure that there will be no mistakes. Let's take a look at the embroidery. I'm curious, what is it? Such embroidery is worthy of such wood." Fan Zijian looked at Mr. Zhu, and Mr. Zhu took out the embroidery from a box and unfolded it for them to see. As soon as the thing was opened, the shopkeeper's expression turned a little ugly. He recognized that the thing was brought by Mu Yangling. After Mu Yangling left, he kept calling people's attention. Knowing that she didn't sell the item in the end, but took it back, he was even less anxious, thinking that the other party would definitely have to bring it to Xingzhou Mansion again. Then raise the price a little bit, not afraid that she will not sell it. Even if she really does not sell it, he will have a way to force her to sell it. But I didn't expect that she would sell the things to the Chi family. Is there someone behind her? But that day she was dressed in ordinary clothes, and even her clothes were a little dirty, a typical poor ghost with no money. How did she sell things to the Chi family? Fan Zijian glanced at the shopkeeper, took a panoramic view of the changes in his face, and smiled sarcastically, without pointing it out. It was not only the shopkeeper of Jingxi Yufang who was aggrieved because of Mu Yangling, but also the second shopkeeper of Zhufulu. Because there was a problem with the pork in Zhufulu that day, many dishes could not be cooked. If it was normal, it would be fine. The customers who come here just order other dishes, and Zhufulu is not only famous for this dish. But on that day, Boss Li bought 4 little wild boars from Mu Yangling. He raised 2 of them first, and immediately made the other 2 and put them on the high platform, saying that they were the specialties of Hongguolo today. Hongguolo and Zhufulu are facing each other. The customers who were sitting and waiting to order in Zhufulu went to Hongguolo to catch up with the excitement. Those loyal customers who are not in Zhufulu feel that eating in Hongguolo is still worthwhile. That's right, anyway, Zhufulu didn't have the dish he wanted to eat. So the people who watched the excitement in the past didn't come back. What's more, the 2 pots of incense were bought by 2 tables of guests at a high price, and they were tasted in public at the end. They were praised as the most delicious in Xingzhou Prefecture. And those guests who were pulled over after eating the dishes of Hongguolo felt that they were not much worse than Zhufulu. When they wanted to go to the restaurant the next day, they saw that Hongguolo was still busy, and went again as soon as they turned their feet. We went to Hongguolo. On the 3rd day, although some customers are still used to eating in Zhufulu, many people choose Hongguolo, and some people come to Hongguolo directly after seeing the crowds in Zhufulu. Originally, Zhufulu was steadily winning against Hongguolo, but now the 2 sides are evenly matched. The shopkeeper of Zhufulu naturally wanted to find out the reason, and he found Mu Yangling. The little wild boar that was turned into a fragrant pig was sold by Mu Yangling to Hongguolo, but the shopkeeper couldn't trouble Mu Yangling, because he came to find them first, and then went to Hongguolo after being rejected by them. Although there are unwritten rules in this area, if you want to do business in Zhufulu, you can't do business in Hongguolo, but it is unwritten after all. Mu Yangling did it, and they have nothing to do with her. So he could only find the second shopkeeper. He asked him to send someone away, but since the other party brought good things, why did he push him away? The second shopkeeper couldn't tell what was wrong, and the first shopkeeper obviously wanted to use him as a scapegoat, and he didn't even have a chance to tell the difference. Mu Yangling doesn't know these things. Now, she is busy fertilizing the wheat and ridges. This is a big project, not much easier than sowing. Old man's son brought a cow over to Mu Yangling, and said with a smile, although the little girl is strong, she can't be so careless. Come on, this is your family's share. I'll come and get it in 3 days. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 184. Before Mu Yangling refused, the ant took the rope in his hand and said with a smile, "Thank you, brother son, you don't have to give our family 3 days in particular, just like the big guys. It takes half a day for my family to use it for me long time." Old man's son didn't insist either, and nodded upon hearing the words, "That's fine, bring it to me when you run out at noon, and I'll send it to the Hu family." The ant agreed happily, and after seeing old man's son leave, she said to Mu Yangling, "It's better for the Sun family to make a small flag, at least everyone doesn't have so many grievances." Now old man's son's youngest son, Sun Yu, is serving as the flag, and it is natural for the Sun family to distribute these resources. The Sun family is very good at life, and did not make many changes to the previous regulations of the Mu family. This cow is still a family for a long time, but the order has been changed from the previous lottery to the arrangement of the Sun family. Like the Mu family, The Sun family did not ask the people in the village to help with farm work, but did their own work. Although some of the measures showed some signs of favoritism, but with the Hu family in front, everyone's opinion on this acceptance is high. And Mu Yangling didn't have much sense about it, because she didn't think she would fight for those resources. Seeing that her aunt took the cow, she couldn't help asking curiously, "Didn't you say that cows always go wrong and waste wheat? Is it easy for me? How did you pick it up?" The aunt glared at her. "How can anyone compare myself to a cow? It's better to pick it up, lest the villagers see that we don't want anything and think we are easy to bully. I will keep this cow even if I don't order it. It takes half a day of work." Mu Yangling was embarrassed, and couldn't help saying, "Auntie, we have to be responsible for the fodder when the cow is in our hands, and not only at this time, but also in the future. Xiaolin has to learn embroidery and help take care of the children. Ziyuheng will follow me to raise rabbits and do farm work, and you will also go to the city to set up a stall to do farm work. My mother has never left her needle and thread, and Bowen has to go to school, so who has the time to herd cattle?" The aunt was dumbfounded, and then she remembered that if cattle were used, not only would she have to be responsible for its fodder now, but she would also have to take turns to graze the cattle in the off-season. "Then, why don't we just stay for half a day?" the aunt said with a firm expression. "That's it. I'll go to old man Sun and tell him afternoon. I don't think he dares to arrange for our family to graze cattle. You dad is now the #1 celebrity in front of the little general." "I just don't know what this #1 celebrity is doing," Mu Yangling muttered in a low voice. "Say what?" "I said that I don't know how many barrels of evening incense our family needs to buy. Didn't Grandpa Sun say that we can buy it together to lower the price? Maybe it can be reduced to a penny a barrel. In the past, when everyone went to buy night incense, they bought from each family, or they made an appointment with a few good ones to go together, but this time it was hosted by the Sun family. Give it to the Sun family, and the Sun family will give it to those who resell Yes Yang, they just need to pull the bucket to get it." The aunt pondered for a while and said, "Our family has a lot of land, don't you still want to top dress the corn and rice? Why don't you just buy them together, so as not to have to make a few trips, and then you can help my aunt calculate how many barrels you got." When I went back at night, Mu Yangling took out a pen and paper to look at my aunt. My aunt pointed her fingers and said, "We must have enough fertilizer for wheat and rice. There are 72 acres of wheat in total. The fertilizer for low-grade land must be 2 barrels per mu, and less for middle-grade and high-grade land, 1 barrel per acre, so there are 74 barrels, and the rice is all in the first-class land, so it is 1 barrel per mu, 13 barrels. How many barrels are there?" Mu Yangling's pen was useless, and he said, "It's 87, and there are still cornfields. The cornfields are all inferior, and they should be more fertile." My aunt frowned. In fact, until now, she still has no confidence in the harvest of corn. What she inquired about was that the corn planted was similar to wheat. She had never seen a plant like Aling, and now everyone in the village feeling that the 28 acres of corn in their family was white, my aunt naturally didn't want to work hard on it. Mu Yangling didn't know what her aunt was thinking, she just bit her pen and thought, the distance between the plants and the plants of this corn are larger than that of wheat, which means that it must bear more fertilizer than wheat, and there was no base fertilizer before, then it's better to have 3 barrels per acre, and that's it. Mu Yangling wrote down the number of 171 barrels on the paper, and blew, "Auntie, this year our family will only use 171 barrels of Yexiang." The aunt was dumbfounded, "This is too much. The fertilizer used for the 28 acres of cornfields can almost catch up with the combination of wheat and rice. No, no, it's too expensive." But Mu Yangling had already pondered, "Auntie, why don't we buy enough Yexiang for 300 wen, and let's scatter the excess on the pasture, so that the pasture can grow better and the rabbits can grow stronger." Yes, how did I forget this? the pasture also needs to be fertilized. I have never heard that grass needs to be fertilized, so my aunt couldn't help saying, didn't this grass grow by itself? Mu Yangling knew that it was difficult for her to accept this, so she said, Auntie thinks that I am raising the land. Think about it, after 5 years, my 67 acres of low-grade land will all become middle-grade land. In 5 years, all of them will become top-notch lands, and it will be beautiful just thinking about it. The aunt smiled and beat her, nonsense, how can there be such a good land to raise? Come on, our family is not short of these few hundred yuan now, I can earn it back by setting up a stall for a long time, you can buy it if you want bar. Going to the morning market to sell wild animals every day, my aunt can also earn 300 or 400 yuan a day, so it is better to object to this before. As Aling said, the land is fattened, and they are also fattened. It's time to raise land. Mu Yangling calculated happily, and finally reported the number of 300 barrels. The land of the Hu family is twice as large as that of the Mu family, and they only reported 300 barrels. Seeing the number of the Mu family, the old man who couldn't help but look a few more times. Old man's son smiled when he saw it, the Mu family doesn't need it now. Lacking this little money, I heard that the father of the former son, Aling, has sent someone to bring things back, and their family can collect a lot of money just by setting up a stall in the city every day. Relatives take up a lot of light at home. Old man who turned around without saying a word and left. Old man's son curled his lips. Originally, the Hu family got a lot of credit from the Mu family because Hu's second wife had a good relationship with Mu Yangling, and Hu Fang's relationship with Ma Liu's was also good. Well, now that the two families have fallen out, the benefits are finally leaked out to them. Isn't that how his son's Zioki came from? Old man's son was determined to follow the footsteps of the Mu family and establish a good policy for the relationship between the two families. He didn't look at anything else but just watched the little general come here every now and then. If he sticks to this policy, he won't suffer. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 185. Yexiang is a smelly thing to the people in the city, but it is a good thing to the peasants. Those who pour night incense have two incomes. They pour night incense for people in the city at a price of 1.5 cents per barrel. Regardless of whether they are full or not, they will pay this price for as many barrels as they bring, and sell them to farmers for 1.5 cents per barrel. They are scattered, and if the quantity is large, the price can be lowered. For example, last time, when my aunt went to buy it, the price was reduced to 1 penny or 2, but this time the Sun family can lower the price to 1 penny or even lower. When pulling the bucket to receive, Mu Yangling deeply felt that it was not easy for everyone, especially for her. She might still be able to smell the smell after 3 days. Mu Yangling went back with a green face. The aunt knew that little girls like to be clean, so she said, when your brother is older, I will take him there. You are a girl and you can't keep doing this kind of thing. Do you think my brother's little arms and legs can move? Mu Yangling planned to pick some grapefruit leaves and take a bath to get rid of the bad smell. You don't need to buy night incense anymore, rabbit dung is also a good thing, you see, how long has it been? I have cleaned up a lot of it outside. If this rabbit can be raised on this scale until next spring, our family will not only have base fertilizer and top dressing, maybe there will be a lot left to raise land. The ant snapped her fingers and said, Mr. Fan's caravan has been going south for 7 or 8 days, right? I don't know where it went. Can the things you make really sell? Mu Yangling is half confident, and the rest depends on Fan Zijin's ability. She doesn't know how to do business, so how can she control it? Now all she can control is her own land, and strive to make them harvest. Mu Yangling carried the iron plow and went to the wheat field with his aunt to fertilize the ridges. After they had top-dressed all the 72 acres of wheat, the rice could also be top-dressed. This is much simpler, just drain some water, spread the adjusted fertilizer into the field, and wait for the next rain. Mu Yangling and Ma Liu's work was done in one day. Then there are corn top-dressing and weeding ridges. There are only 2 steps. Just apply the fertilizer to the roots of the corn, and then plow the ridge with an iron. The weeds in the row will be plowed off, and the moist soil will cover the fertilizer so that the corn can grow better absorption, although it is more tiring than top dressing of wheat, but it is much simpler because there are only 28 acres. Mu Yangling and his aunt worked hard for 6 days to finish it. It was already mid-April at this time. When my aunt went to the wheat field to see the growth of the wheat, she realized that it seemed to have rained twice since the wheat was planted, and it was not heavy. It hasn't rained for a month, and this is the usual year. At least, there must be 2 rains from mid to late March. Malu raised her head worriedly and glanced at the shining sun in the sky, feeling even more ominous in her heart. Apparently Ma and Lu were not the only ones who were worried about this. People who were used to planting land were more or less worried. Seeing that the fertilizer had been fertilized for more than 10 days, and there was still no shadow of rain, Lu Daqian came to look for it in person. Malayashi said, "Sister, you can take Aling and start watering the ground tomorrow." Malu hesitated and said, "Wait a little longer, our family opened this hole, I'm afraid we will start grabbing water. I can't wait any longer. Didn't you see that the river has gone down? Tonight, our Liu's family will start carrying water to irrigate, and we will go to your house tomorrow, so it's not too early." My Lu family started the matter. Malayashi stopped talking immediately. Lu Daqian got up and said, "That's it? You should sleep well tonight." Mrs. Malu hurriedly stopped him, and took half a rabbit out of the kitchen and stuffed it into his hand. "Take it back and give it to the child as a teeth-beating sacrifice. I will go to the city to buy more wooden barrels in a while. Don't worry, in this city no one in Guthun dares to bully the Mu family." Lu Daqian nodded, and said, "Although Shitu is capable, he is not at home after all. If you have any troubles, ask someone to call us. Kaoxi village is not far from here. There are quite a lot of people in our Lu family here." "Understood, go back quickly." Malayashi sent him away, turned around and went into the house to get the copper coins saved in the past 2 days, went to the city and bought 2 pairs of wooden barrels and returned. Mu Yangling didn't know anything about it. He was still looking at his own rabbits in the pastoral area. The wild rabbits he caught had been locked up much more docilely, because the more than 60 mu of land was netted and water was dug outside. Ziyuheng was not worried about the rabbits running away or burrowing into the ditch. She would let them out every night, and come back the next morning to drive the rabbits in. Because rabbits are active at night and mostly sleep during the day, so that there will be more time for Ziyuheng, and there is no need to prepare a lot of pasture. Just go around and see where the pasture is eaten by the rabbits, and then sprinkle some seeds. Or take out the rabbits who burrowed to sleep and refused to go back to the shed last night and throw them back to the shed. Now she is very proficient at this job, even more skilled than Mu Yangling. There are already a dozen or so rabbits in the shed with big bellies, and they should be able to give birth soon. This is good news for Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng, because it means that the next generation of rabbit seedlings is guaranteed. When it was dark, Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng let the rabbits out, and seeing them running excitedly into the grass and disappearing, Ziyuheng clapped her hands and said, "Cousin, let's go back." Mu Yangling nodded, and Ziyuheng crossed the ditch from the wooden boards they had erected, removed the boards, and then got up and left. "Cousin, you said that our rabbit is here, why no one came to steal it? I was so worried that I couldn't sleep, but I didn't expect that I never lost one of the rabbits. Everyone knows that this rabbit was raised by the little general and Mr. Fan. The camp of the 5th Battalion is there. Who dares to steal this rabbit after eating it? In fact, this also has something to do with Mu Yangling sleeping at home at ease. Everyone sees that the Mu family is not worried about losing the rabbit at all, so they dare not steal it. They are afraid that someone is ambushing in the pasture and will be caught by the little general as soon as they make a move. It's a good job. When the two cousins returned home, Xu Wanyang had already prepared the food and was waiting. Xiaolan was taking care of Bosi and Kijia, and Bowen was doing homework by the light. Mu Yangling looked around and asked, "Where is Auntie?" "Your aunt is in the house, hurry up and ask her to eat." Xu Wanyang brought out all the dishes, and said, "Your aunt has something to talk to you in a while, so hurry up and eat." After dinner, my aunt gathered the whole family together and said, "Tomorrow we will start watering the wheat. Ziyuheng and Xiaolan will go, and we will water the high-grade and middle-grade lands first. Aling, no one will water the wheat tonight. Go to bed late, you have to get up early tomorrow morning." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 186. Bowen looked at his sister anxiously. Mu Yangling touched his head and said, "This has nothing to do with you, you just need to study hard, and come back early after school to bring your younger brothers and sisters." Xu Wanyang said, "Auntie, let Xiaolan stay home to take care of the children, I'll go." Seeing that she wanted to object, she smiled slightly and said, "I feel uneasy about staying at home, and I don't know if there will be water grabbing. After all, I am an adult, so I am more useful than Xiaolan." The aunt stopped talking immediately, nodded and said, "That's fine." She looked at them sternly and said, "If someone grabs water, don't argue with them, let alone fight with them, you understand?" My aunt mainly focused on Aling, and said, "Aling, Auntie knows that you are powerful, but you are no match for four legs. You still have to protect us, let alone their opponents. Anyway, I forbid you because of grabbing water and fighting with people. I would rather you go home first, even if the wheat is not watered, it's okay." Ma Liu's son got into a dispute with the landlord's son because of Ma Yukei's grabbing water. When he went home, he got into a fight with his brothers to seek justice. When the fight broke out, Ma Yukei hid behind him and pushed Ma Fugui away. When the landlord's son went out with a hoe, Ma Fugui fell down. The daughter-in-law who went to see the situation hurriedly stepped forward to stop those people from doing four things, but was beaten indiscriminately, and gave birth to a child with difficulty. The baby boy died. The child died after only half a day. This is the saddest memory for Malu, and it also made her full of vigilance and fear about the water grabbing. But no matter how wary they were, they had to irrigate the fields at home. Otherwise their crops would not be harvested. Xu Wanyang also followed because she knew the danger. After all, she was an adult, so even if she had little strength, she could at least say a few words when conflicts occurred. Early the next morning, the four of them picked up buckets and went to the east. Malu said, "Aling, go and dig the hole leading to the rice field, let the water flow into the rice field, don't open too much, and be careful not to damage it." Rice. Mu Yangling won, and Malu took Xu Wanyang and Ziyuheng to fetch water to irrigate the wheat. Because the 13 mu of high-quality land was facing the river, Mu Yangling let the water flow into the rice field without much effort, and then went to water the wheat field with his aunt and the others. Not to mention Xu Wanyang and Ziyuheng, even my aunt and Mu Yangling couldn't stand carrying water like this uninterruptedly. The shoulders will be sore. Even if Mu Yangling is strong and doesn't feel tired, the shoulders will definitely hurt after being squeezed for such a long time. This is still the wheat field on this side, and the one to the south is bigger, and there are only ditches dug there, but no river. Mu Yangling looked up at the large wheat field, his eyes darkened. "Auntie, take a rest, I'll come." The aunt rubbed her shoulders and motioned her to look up. "Look, every household has started to carry water, and the water in this river will go down in a few days. The village must have started carrying water for irrigation. This river comes from the Jialing River and has never been used frequently." Mu Yangling thought for a while and said, "Auntie, why don't I bring water over for you to pour, so that you can rest faster?" "No," Shu Wanyang gasped, "your shoulders are still tender. Carrying water is different than carrying things. You and Ziyuheng should stop for a while, or you won't grow taller in the future." "Mother, don't worry," Mu Yangling said with a smile, "I've already thought about it just now. I don't need to pick it up with my shoulders. I'll take it with my hands so that it won't be pressed on my shoulders. If I can't press my shoulders, I have great strength. Now, it doesn't matter if you run all day." Mu Yangling didn't feel tired carrying water, but felt that his shoulder hurt from the pressure. Once this problem was solved, it would be much easier. Mu Yangling carried 2 buckets to carry water to water them, and it was able to supply them, and he could take a rest from time to time, so the speed would be faster. Mu Yangling looked at the distance between the river bank and their wheat fields, and couldn't help but think that it would be great if there was a water pipe, and the water would be pumped up directly, and they squeezed the water pipe to pour a large area. But this is just a thought. Where did Mu Yangling go to find the water pipe? Every family has to start watering the wheat fields. The river is only so long, so there will inevitably be some friction when passing by. It's better if some people dislike the people in front of them for carrying water too slowly, or some people just pass through other people's wheat fields in a hurry. It was big, and it exploded all at once. Fortunately, this is only the first day. Although there are some disputes, it has not yet reached the point of doing it. My aunt is not surprised by this. Such things happen every year when rushing to harvest or grab water, and Mu Yangling and the others will look up at the beginning, and even if the quarrel happens not far from them in the end, they can pass them without looking sideways. The water level of the river began to drop. Mu Yangling and the others had already watered all the wheat in the east, leaving only the wheat in the south. At this time, the phenomenon of grabbing water also occurred from time to time. Even in this village, there have been 2 fights incident, not to mention the disputes with the neighboring villages. When Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin heard the news and rushed over, what they saw was the scene of the fields in full swing. Chi Heiran frowned and asked, "Is the drought so severe?" The General Banner, who was following Chi Heiran, knew the situation, and said, "Little General, the wheat and rice are about to start earing. During this period, we need a certain amount of water, so everyone is in such a hurry. If it rains next, it will be fine. If it doesn't go down, it will definitely have to be watered again when the grouting is done, but I don't know if there will be enough water in the river by then, and if there is enough water, the conflict will be even bigger." That's right, there is still enough water in the river, but the fights are just because of priority and convenience. Next time, if there is not enough water in the river, don't fight more fiercely. Don't look at these farmers who are usually honest, but they can work hard for the crops in the field. I heard that many people were beaten to death for grabbing water in previous years. Chi Heiran went down to the field with a sullen face to check the situation. After walking around, he didn't find Mu Yangling, so he turned to the south. Fan Zijin was also shocked. Chi Heiran said in a low voice, "Fortunately, we dug the reservoirs and canals before the beginning of spring. Heiran, if it doesn't rain again in half a month, you can send troops to guard the 3 reservoirs, which can save lives at critical times." Chi Heiran nodded, "I know." Mu Yangling walked quickly in the wheat field with both hands in his hands, brought it to Shu Wanyang, picked up another pair of wooden barrels and turned to fetch water from the ditch. At this time, Mu Yangling couldn't help but be thankful that Chi Heiran was asked to dig the canal from her family's field. Although it took up a lot of land, it also showed convenience at this time. Needless to say, the wheat fields in the east were close to the river, and the canal was dug through the middle of the inferior land, so she didn't use that canal, but on the south side, her family was able to move so fast because of this canal. The canal flows through their land, and it took her the shortest time to fetch water in the past. Therefore, although their family is small, the speed is not slow. In addition, the land is relatively small compared to other families, so it is almost watering now. It's over. Mu Yangling wanted to water the cornfield as well, but Malu felt that there was no need to be in such a hurry, and said, "Let everyone rest for 2 days, let's slow down first. I look at the corn and I am still very energetic, so don't worry." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 187. Mu Yangling, Qi Heiran ran over, looked at her wheat field, and said, "It's not bad, it seems to be almost finished." "It doesn't seem like it's already finished watering. Such a big incident happened in your residence. Why did you come? Also, my father hasn't come back for 20 days. Why did you send him? I don't understand things like this, so what's the use of me coming here?" Qi Heiran looked around and said in a low voice, "Your father has made military achievements, so don't worry." Mu Yangling stared at him with wide eyes. "Did you send my father to the battlefield?" Qi Heiran argued, "Your father asked for this." Mu Yangling was silent for a moment and didn't ask any more questions. Qi Heiran said, "Your father brought something back for you, and I will bring it to you later." Qi Heiran asked Mu Yangling, "I still remember you said that there will be a drought in early summer this year, and there are already signs. How long do you think the drought will last?" "I don't know," Mu Yangling said, "I also heard from the old people in the village, and they wouldn't know. If they could have predicted the weather, the land wouldn't be so difficult. Maybe you can ask someone who knows astronomy. Our 5th Battalion has 3 reservoirs and 3 canals. At least the loss will not be too great, but not necessarily in other places. This year's grain and grass supply will not be allocated by the imperial court. It must be difficult for eldest brother now." Qi Heiran was a little depressed. He wants to help his brother. Mu Yangling looked at Fan Zijian, and Fan Zijian said, "The caravan has just arrived at Linen Mansion, and it's not certain when it will come back, let alone money. Without money, they would not be able to buy food and grass." Mu Yangling sighed, "There are still 3 months before the wheat can be harvested, and it is impossible to see what the harvest will be like now." Fan Zijian's heart skipped a beat. Because Xingzhou Prefecture is in the north, the sowing is later and the harvest is later than that in Jiangnan. Moreover, the rice in Jiangnan can be planted twice a year. If he has money, he can transfer a batch of grain from Jiangnan. The corners of Fan Zijian's mouth curled up slightly. He doesn't have any money now, but his mother does. Fan Zijian didn't think there was anything wrong with asking for money from his mother. Anyway, his mother only had one son, so who else could he give it to if he didn't give it to him? Fan Zijian thought in his heart, why not let his mother embezzle some of the family's money? Most of his father's money should belong to him, but he is not in Linen Mansion now. It would be nice if he could get some of the concubine brothers. Fan Zijian was picking up money from his parents here, and Qi Heiran was also picking up his own money in his heart. After doing some calculations, he found that not only did he have no money, but he seemed to owe Zijian a lot of money. Qi Heiran feels that he is really poor enough when the money is used up. Qi Heiran never thought of borrowing money from Fan Zijian to buy food and grass, because it was one thing for him to take advantage of his brother, but another for the army to take advantage of his brother. After the Mu family watered the cornfields, the fields were also watered one after another in various places, and the water in the river dropped sharply, which made everyone terrified. Fortunately, the water in the 3 reservoirs is full, and the people in Wuying will show a comfortable smile every time they see the 3 large reservoirs. But other places are not so good. Some river sections have begun to dry up, and there is no sign of rain at all. The local officials can only look at Qi Heiran's 3 reservoirs with greed, but other camps have already come to ask for water. The main task of the 1st Battalion and the 2nd Battalion is to guard the Xincheng Pass, and there are not many military fields in charge of farming, but the 3rd Battalion and the 4th Battalion do not have preferential treatment. Like the 5th Battalion, They need to be responsible for a lot of military fields, so the two generals found come to your door. Chi Heiran refused all of them, and said venomously, I wanted to build private houses, build camps, and repair water conservancy. When I asked you, you said that you wanted to guard the gate and train soldiers. Could it be that you didn't want to train soldiers at that time? If you want water, don't you? Go away. The two generals smiled and said, the little general is out of touch now, isn't he? They all work for the general. At that time, the Jin soldiers fought fiercely, and we really couldn't spare a hand to help. Now it's all right, the Jin soldiers don't know why did you get into a fight with Zixia, and you said that you still need our help? In a word, we will come here immediately. Chi Heiran curled his lips, now that we've done everything, it's too late for you to say that. Come on, I still have to train soldiers. Please do your own thing. Seeing him waving his hands away, the generals of the 3rd Battalion had a bad look on their faces, he's too proud. We begged him so loudly, but he didn't even give us any face. He has the confidence, and there are generals on top, what can you do? The general of the 3rd Battalion gritted his teeth and said, I used to think that he was not bad in the 5th Battalion, at least he helped us receive a lot of waste, but now it seems that he will still make us feel uncomfortable. A waste camp, dare to talk to us like that. Hey, shut up, do you think the little general is incapable of relying on the general to make a living? Before the 4th Battalion, he practiced it all by himself. The general of the 4th Battalion whispered, don't annoy him, he has a bad temper, it's too big, the general can't do anything with him. The generals of the 3rd Battalion waved their hands and left. The matter here was quickly reported to Chi Ziyuan. Zhang Ziyi said, General, why don't you tell the 4th son to let them go, or the soldiers below may have opinions? Chi Ziyuan said indifferently, so what if you have an opinion? Heiran worked so hard to build the water conservancy. Why should someone ask him to give it up to others? Let them make trouble. I want to see how far they can go. Don't restrain Heiran, as long as no one is killed, he can do whatever he wants. My brother Chi Ziyuan is not a child who only knows how to drink milk, let him handle it by himself. Chi Ziyuan also wanted to know how far his younger brother could go. In the past, he was dealing with the relationship with his subordinates, but now he was dealing with colleagues of the same class. Chi Heiran refused to give it, and the generals from the 3rd Battalion and the 4th Battalion did not come to the door again. Anyway, it is only the end of April, and there is still a long time before the next watering. What if it rains during this time? Chi Heiran did not have them to worry about, and began to focus on training troops. With the approval of his elder brother, he set up a scout team to investigate the enemy's situation. Mu Shi was the captain and was sent out by him. Now he stays in the kingdom of Jin. Mu Shi was easily trusted by the Jurchens because of his appearance. Chi Heiran opened the package he sent back, and after checking that there was nothing special inside, he handed it to Fei Bai to take it to Mu Yangling. Fei Bai took out a gold bar from his bag, and asked in a low voice, Master, keep this one too. Keep it? I will send it to them in the future as long as there is no information in it. The gold bar was obtained by Mu Shi desperately. Could it be that the Lord is still greedy for that thing? No, the younger one thinks the amount of gold bars is too large. What if Miss Mu guesses that Uncle Mu is in the kingdom of Jin? Chi Heiran looked at him contemptuously and said, Mu Yangling already guessed that Mu Shi is in the kingdom of Jin. As long as she doesn't know what her father is doing in the kingdom of Jin, it's all right. It's you, who always follows the Lord, and unexpectedly arrived. It is only now that I guess that Mu Shi is in the kingdom of Jin. Fei Bai shrank his neck. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 188. Mu Yangling received the bundle and opened it to see that there was a 5-foot stack of soft cotton cloth inside, and a gold bar was hidden inside. Malayashi was shocked when he saw the gold bar, and hurried to close the door. Where did your father get this thing? Mu Yangling also frowned slightly. It seems that the work that the old man did was not an ordinary danger, otherwise how could he have the opportunity to get such a thing? Mu Yangling put away the gold bars and said, since it was sent by the little general, there is no problem, we just put it away, auntie, now we don't have to worry about what to do if there is a drought. Malu frowned, you can't rely on your father alone, let's sit and eat at home, right? Xu Wanyang was very optimistic, and said with a smile, it won't be more difficult than when winter begins. She also dug out some small things from the bag. Your father bought these for you, Aling, for your younger brothers and sisters, let's take it. Malu saw that although Xu Wanyang was smiling, her eyes turned red, knowing that she was worried about Mu Shi, she sighed in her heart, and put the burden in Mu Yangling's arms, saying, go, I will have a few words with your mother talk. Mu Yangling took the things to his room. Mu Shi bought some small pearl flowers for her and Ziyuheng Xiaolin, and a seal for Bowen. Bowen was very happy to receive the gift from his father. He gasped and covered the paper, and asked his sister excitedly, sister, when will daddy come back? I miss him. Hurry up. Mu Yangling calculated the time in his mind. Mu Shi has been away from home for 2 months, no matter how difficult the task is, it should be completed soon, right? It's not a long-term latency. Mu Yangling didn't expect that this sentence made them wait for more than a month. Mu Yangling was sitting on a stool with hay. The rabbits she raised now filled 9 sheds, and the remaining one was used to house the young rabbits, because the rabbits are already very large, and the supply of grass in the pasture area is somewhat insufficient. So, Mu Yangling went up the mountain and cut a lot of grass, dried it in the yard, and fed it section by section, so that the rabbit meat would be firmer. Sitting on the steps, Malayashi looked at the big sun in the sky and sighed, God doesn't give people a way to live. Old man Sun walked over, leaned against the wall of Mu's house, looked up at the sky, and sighed, didn't all the scholars say that with God, everything is a dog, and so are people? God is not benevolent, why? Will it give us a way out? Mu Yangling, who had just taken the tea bowl to drink water, sprayed it out, almost spraying it on Ziyuheng, who was pouring water for her. Mu Yangling coughed and said happily, Grandpa Sun is really knowledgeable, he can even say what I say. Old man Sun patted his head in embarrassment, I learned it just by listening, how can it be compared to you who have all learned characters seriously? Mu Yangling said slightly seriously, Grandpa Sun, Taoists say that heaven and earth are not benevolent. Actually, I don't agree with it. On the contrary, I think God is the most benevolent and righteous. All things in this world are common people, and it treats them equally and allows them to survive and multiply in it. Breathing, this is the greatest benevolence and righteousness. Then why doesn't it rain for us? Old man Sun asked in confusion. This is also a part of nature. Generally speaking, the energy between the sky and the earth is balanced. The rain in the sky is caused by the sun evaporating the water vapor on the ground, and then the rain in the sky falls again. Mu Yangling said, last year's heavy snows consumed a lot of water vapor. For balance, there may be drought this summer. Maybe there is more water in another place, and this side will be dry. Maybe it will be dry this year. In a few or 2 years, the hidden clouds will reappear, and the ground will be flooded again. We cannot control the weather now, but we can only control our own behavior as much as possible. Old man Sun and Mrs. Malu did not understand. Malayashi directly changed the subject and asked, why is old brother Sun free to sit here today? Old man Sun was silent for a while, and said, isn't it because the water in the river is getting less and less? In a few days, if it doesn't rain again on this day, we will start irrigation? Old sister, Do you see that the ditch in your house is not? Do you want to block it? The folks in our village can say that people nearby can still draw water from your ditch, but other villages have objections, thinking that your ditch has taken up a lot of water. What about cheating ghosts? Mrs. Malu felt contemptuous. People in other villages also dig ditches. They have never heard of anyone telling them to block them. This is the water conservancy that they have dug hard. How can they be blocked? After all, the people in the village are jealous of the convenience of the Mu family. Not only are there 2 large water canals passing through her own land, it is convenient to carry water for irrigation, but there are also small water ditches on the grass of more than 60 mu of land. Carrying water around is not tiring. Walking along the small ditch in this way can cover more than 60 mu of land in 10 days. Therefore, even in droughts, their pasture grows well, and they can feed more than 3,000 chickens. Rabbit. Mrs. Malu was silent for a long time. She didn't want to conflict with everyone because of this matter. Anyway, as the river water became less and less, most of the ditches would have to be shut down, so she said along the way, "Okay, my name is Ling. Another day go and block the ditch, but I'll say the ugly things first. It's okay to block the ditch, but I don't have time to drain the water in the ditch, so don't come to me for an inch later." Look at what the old sister said. Am I that kind of person? Old man's son felt relieved after receiving the confirmation letter, and got up and said, "Then I'll go back first, as long as the old sister remembers this." Mrs. Malu nodded, and when she saw him leaving, she turned her head and said to Mu Yangling, "Ling, you will block the ditch tomorrow, and then go to your uncle's house and call your cousins come over and build a thatched hut at the rabbit shed. After 2 days, my aunt will move there to live and watch it herself. I still don't feel at ease if the rabbit is left there like this. It's a dry day, and people's hearts will be impetuous. It is easy to do bad things when you are impetuous. That can't be guarded by my aunt. I'll go." Malayashi glared at her. "Don't worry about this big family. Don't worry, I'm just going to light a lamp. As long as there is a light on, those people will shrink their courage, but this family is different. Although you don't say it, but I also know that your father has done great things outside. If someone who offends comes to your door, and you are outside again, we are old, weak, and we are young, we must not be slaughtered by others." Mu Yangling pondered, and Malayashi patted her, and said with a hearty smile, "Don't worry, my aunt has traveled more roads than you have eaten salt, and I know the little thieves watching rabbits best. Some people have lights, and with the backing of the little general, they have to weigh the consequences, and our Mu family is not easy to bully." "Who bullied our Mu family?" Mu Shi came in from the outside with an unshaven beard, looking at the people in the yard with piercing eyes. Mu Yangling stared at his father dumbfounded. Before he could react, Xu Wanyang rushed out of the door, looking at him with red eyes. You're back. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 189. Mu Shi looked at his wife with a smile on his lips, handed her the bundle in his hand, and said with a warm smile, "I'm back." Xu Wanyang lowered her head with red eyes, with a cheerful smile on her face, and said in a crisp voice, "Come into the house, look at you, covered in dust. I'll boil water for you to take a bath. By the way, what do you want to eat today?" Aling went to the mountain to hunt a roe deer, but there is not much oil. How about I ask Ziyuheng to go to the city to cut 2 catties of pork and come back to make braised pork for you? Looking at his chattering wife, Mu Shi nodded and said, "Okay, you arrange it." Xu Wanyang went into the house happily. Mu Yangling stared at her mother dumbfounded. Just now, she had the feeling that her mother was a 16-year-old girl, and the happiness on her body was something she had never seen before. Seeing the way his father looked at his mother dotingly, Mu Yangling closed his mouth, and finally pulled Ziyuheng out together. She wanted to go to the city with Ziyuheng to buy pork. When he was leaving, he took Bosi and Kijia away, euphemistically saying that he took the two children out for a walk. My aunt originally wanted to ask Mushi what he had been doing these past few months, but when she saw that there were only the two of them left in the whole yard, she understood, turned around, went into the house, took a hoe and went out. She should go weeding the vegetables. As for Xiaolin, that child is sitting in the room embroidering. Even if the sky falls, she probably won't notice. I believe Mushi and the others will forget the existence of this person. Bowen is studying in the academy. Mu Yangling was holding Bosi, and seeing that Xiaolin was having difficulty holding Kijia, he stretched out his hand and lifted her into his arms. The two children are already 8 months old, they are eating well, they are white and strong, and they are active. Looking around, Ziyuheng is very difficult to hold, but Mu Yangling holds one in each hand, just like holding two small melons. Yes, no matter how Kijia turns her body around, or jumps up and down on her arms, she won't fall. The two children hated the chance to go out, and looked around curiously. When they arrived at the gate of the city, seeing so many people, Kijia directly stretched out his hands and rushed towards them, and Mu Yangling pulled her back with a slight effort. Although Bosi was more refined, he also stared wide-eyed and pointed at those people who were saying ah to his sister. After a while, seeing that his sister didn't seem to understand, he turned his head and said ah to his sister. Kijia didn't know if she understood, but she nodded ah anyway. The two children leaned their heads together, speaking the baby language that only they understood, gesticulating from time to time. Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng first went to weigh 2 caddies of pork belly, and then they started to stroll in the market. The two children kicked their feet excitedly when they saw the crowds. When Ziyuheng saw them, she stretched out her hand and patted their little feet, and said with a stern face, "What if I kick my sister to death? Be honest, I'll fall down later." Mu Yangling lifted them over his head with his arms up, and said with a smile, "If you fall, my sister's years of practicing kung fu will be in vain." The two children suddenly became taller, twisted their bodies happily, and giggled. Ziyuheng was startled, and quickly stretched out her arms to protect her. "Oh, cousin, put them down quickly. What should I do if I have a dream at night?" Mu Yangling could only put it down, hugged them in his arms and walked forward, bought some small things for them on the way, and after shopping the street, it was almost time for Bowen to leave school. The two took their children to pick him up at the gate of the academy. As soon as the school bell rang, many children rushed out of the academy. Bowen walked out slowly at the end. When he saw his sister, he was very pleasantly surprised. He ran over and raised his head and asked, "Sister, why are you here?" Ziyuheng smiled and said, "Your father is back, my cousin brought us out to pick you up, and we will buy pork belly by the way, and make braised pork for dinner." Bowen drooled, "My mother must have done it. My cousin came back, of course it was my cousin who did it." When they got home, Shu Wanyang had already prepared several dishes, and Mushi was sitting in the kitchen lighting a fire for her, while she was cooking in front of the stove with a blushing face. Seeing them come back, he couldn't help saying angrily, "Why did it take so long to buy pork? Quickly bring it here, and I'll cut it." Mushi took the pork belly from Ziyuheng's hand and said with a smile, "I'll do it, you prepare the ingredients." Ziyuheng stuck out her tongue, and ran back to the house with Mu Yangling. Bowen looked at his father with bright eyes, and Mushi took the time to rub his head, and praised him with a smile. "That's right, Bowen has not only grown taller, but also studied. Dad will check your homework later, go and read the book." Bowen's eyes lit up, he responded loudly, and ran into the house. Mu Yangling put Bosi and Kijia on the shoulders, rubbed his shoulders and said, "Holding these two small ones is more tiring than fighting a big wild boar weighing more than 200 caddies." Xiaolin was still bowing her head to embroider, so Ziyuheng stepped forward and snatched her embroidery shed, saying, "You don't know how to rest all day, and sooner or later you will burn your eyes. Didn't my cousin say that you have to stop in 2 hours, In the next quarter of an hour, go out and look far away, and look at the green mountains outside. You can see that it is getting dark outside, and you are still bowing your head to so, and sooner or later you will become blind. Xiaolin shrunk her head and lowered her head. Mu Yangling sat next to her, and said in a low voice, "Your sister loves you. She heard that eating goji berry is good for your eyes, so she will earn money to buy you 5 taels for you to soak, drink water and have a snack too. Don't make her worry too much." Xiaolin nodded with red eyes. "I know, but I want to learn more, so that I can take care of my grandma and sister." Mu Yangling touched her head and said with a smile, "Don't be in a hurry. You have to learn it step by step. If you are in a hurry, you can't learn it well." "Xiaolin, my cousin doesn't know about this embroidery. How to calculate, but I heard from my mother that it is the embroiderer and the embroiderer who embroider well, but if the embroidery is embroidered with spirituality, the embroidery has its own meaning and has its own embroidery skills in it. I call everyone." My mother said, "You are spiritual, as long as you endure hardships, you are more than just an embroiderer. So Xiaolin, you can't rush, you have to take your time. You not only have to learn the basic skills well, but you also have to fall in love with embroidery. As long as a person can become a master in an industry, he must love his industry deeply." Xiaolin looked at her in bewilderment. She didn't understand what her cousin meant, but she could feel her solemnity. Xiaolin kept these words in her heart. She thought, maybe she will understand when she grows up. Seeing Mu Yangling comforting her sister, Ziyuheng sat on the side teasing Bosi and Kijia, and when she saw her cousin coming over, she said in a low voice, "I didn't mean to scold her, but I just lose my temper when I'm in a hurry." Mu Yangling smiled and said, "I understand." Xiaolin put away her things carefully, then sat next to her sister, and teased Bosi and Kijia with her, and after a while the two sisters talked together again. Mu Yangling couldn't help smiling when she saw it. The smile on her mouth hadn't faded when Kijia suddenly slapped Bosi's face with her little paw. Bosi was stunned for a while, then cried out with a wow, and threw away the toy he had just snatched from his hand. Seeing that Bosi was crying, Kijia also cried out with a wow, and slapped Bosi's face while crying. Mu Yangling hurriedly stepped forward to grab her little hand, patted her little hand twice and said, How do you hit my brother? You can't hit the toy even if you can't grab it. Isn't it over if you just grab the toy?" The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu. Chapter 190. Mu Shi has a 5-day vacation this time. He told Mu Yangling that he has now settled down in Hanshong Mansion. He is afraid that he will have to do detailed work there for a long time, and he can only go home after a while like now. Stay for a few days. Chi Heiran didn't expect that he asked Mu Shi to keep it a secret, and Mu Shi turned around and told his wife and daughter about it. He didn't know that Mu Shi would never hide anything from his wife. She was not among others, and now that his daughter was in charge of the family, it was even more impossible for Mu Shi to hide anything from her for safety reasons. It's okay if the daughter is a child, but this daughter has behaved differently from others since she was a child. She is sensible and obedient, and she is like an adult when she is 6 years old. Mu Shi is used to discussing important matters with her, and it will be the same this time. Father has no news over there, and it is even less likely that he will have any contact with you after he passes by. He can only ask the little general to bring you some things and a few words when he sends news. Fortunately, I can get some from time to time over there. The little general will not ask us to hand over the money, and the livelihood of the family should not be a problem. Xu Wanyang was stronger than Mu Yangling imagined. Hearing such news, she was just slightly taken aback, and told Mu Shi as it should be, "You must live." Mu Shi nodded, "Don't worry, I said my father is a Jin man, and the barbarians over there will not embarrass me. You should be careful at home, Aling. I will not be at home for a long time. If someone dares to come to provoke me, don't hold back, just throw the person out to me, and I will take care of you if you have something to do. Father, don't worry, Chi Heiran is fair and won't sit idly by. What did my aunt say before? Mu Shi asked with a frown. Mu Yangling was taken aback, then smiled and said, Father, there are some small thieves everywhere, I will try to give them a warning later, and keep the land where they dare not pass by our house for 3 years. A bloodthirsty light flashed in Mu Shi's eyes, and he said, while Dad is at home, Dad will go with you. By the way, call your cousins and ask them to help build a thatched hut. I will also entrust them take good care of you. Xu Wanyang was startled by Mu Shi's aura, and was at a loss. Mu Shi hurriedly restrained his sharpness, and patted his wife's hand apologetically. Mu Yangling sighed in his heart, knowing that his father had seen blood, or he had killed too many people at once, and he hadn't slowed down yet, otherwise he wouldn't be able to hold back his arrogance. Mu Yangling got up to leave, and said in a low voice, Father, you rest first, and I will find my cousin and the others in the morning. Mu Shi nodded. Seeing his daughter close the door, he held his wife's hand tightly and asked in a low voice, Are you afraid of me? Xu Wanyang shook her head, leaned her head on his shoulder, and said softly, You are my husband, why should I be afraid of you? Mu Shi's heart felt hot, he lowered his head to bite his wife's lips, picked her up and carried her to the Kong. Mu Yangling, who was about to send Bosi and Kijia to his parents, paused and turned back to the house. Ziyuheng was surprised, Cousin, why did you bring them back? Bosi and Kijia will sleep with me tonight. Ziyuheng looked at her suspiciously, Are Bosi and Kijia willing to sleep with you? Do you have to wake up at night? The last time my cousin was sick and couldn't take care of the child, my grandma helped take care of the child all night, and she almost stayed up all night. I have been tossed by these 2 children, I really don't know how my cousin can serve them well. Mu Yangling waved his hand and said, Small, I brought the blog posts before. Bowen curled his lips, and said disdainfully, You are talking nonsense, my father has already said that it was my mother who took me to 3 years old before handing me over to you. Mu Yangling glared at him, Do you dare to say that I wasn't responsible for getting up in the middle of the night to pee? Bowen blushed and shouted, You lied, I spread it myself, I remember it all. Okay, I misremembered. Only then was Bowen satisfied, and he turned around and crawled into the Kong to sleep with his mouth pouting. Mu Yangling put the 2 little ones in the middle, and lay on the outside by himself. Looking at the 2 energetic ones, he suddenly had a headache. When did these 2 go to bed? When Mu Yangling got up the next day, his eyes were half closed, and Mu Shi had already filled up the 2 water tanks in the yard in high spirits. Seeing her daughter with her eyes half closed, she stretched out her hand and flicked her forehead, and asked with a smile, What did you do last night? Your eyes are narrowed like this. Mu Yangling looked at him resentfully, I'm taking care of the children, and those 2 are still sleeping on the Kong. Mu Shi blushed, wondering if his daughter knew something, but wasn't this too precocious? Although his daughter is sensible, she can't be so sensible, right? Mu Yangling didn't give him time to think about it, so he splashed cold water on his face and asked, Father, shall I go to my cousin's house now? Huh? Oh, let's go after breakfast. Did you pancake? Mu Yangling smelled the fragrance, and turned his head to the kitchen. Mu Shi gave a hum and said, Baked egg pancakes, you can grab a few and eat them on the road later. Mu Yangling drooled and said, Father, chop up the leftover braised pork from last night and put it in the pancake, add some vegetables to put it in, to remove the smell. Mu Shi stared and said, Where are there so many ways to eat in children's homes? It's so delicious. Mu Yangling didn't feel drowsy anymore, and went straight to rinse his mouth and brush his teeth, then wiped his face, ran into the kitchen, picked up a kitchen knife, and took the initiative to chop up the braised pork left over from last night. Choi Bian drooled and said, It would be great if there were more chili peppers. Add a little to it. It tastes delicious, but it's a pity that Emperor Sejong didn't ask someone to bring back the chili peppers. The last sentence Mu Yangling said in a low voice. Xu Wanyang didn't hear it, but the person in front heard it, and said, "Chili is a lot in Sichuan and Guizhou. If you want to eat it, if there are merchants coming, you can ask, but people here don't like to eat it." Mu Yangling stared and said, "Is there any pepper in Dazhu?" Xu Wanyang burst out laughing, and said amusedly, "You child, if Dazhu didn't have chili, where did you hear about it? It existed 100 years ago, and it was also brought back by Emperor Sejong from Fanbang. It is delicious when added to dishes, but no one is used to it. Emperor Sejong had a bad stomach when he ate it for the first time. Later, the people in the imperial dining room refused to make it, and the courtiers also objected, saying that if the emperor likes spicy food, he can eat it. Eating ginger, this is a good thing." Later, this pepper gradually disappeared in the capital, but people in Sichuan and Guizhou like to eat it very much. My mother once read story of foreign objects when she was in her mother's house, and it said the people there like it. Mu Yangling was very surprised. The courtiers and the imperial dining room even control what the emperor eats. Xu Wanyang said with a smile, "Of course we have to take care of it. The Holy Majesty's body is related to the world. How can he be allowed to do anything wrong?" Then she sighed and said, "Emperor Sejong loves to try these things too much, and that's why he broke his body. He died early at the age of 16, if he could live a few more years, our Dezhou has no idea how glorious it would be." Mu Yangling said sincerely, "Emperor Sejong is so pitiful." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 191. After paying tribute to Emperor Sejong in silence, Mu Yangling rolled up 2 big pancakes and went to Kaoxi village while eating. Lu Ting and Lu Yuan also weeded the wheat at home. When they heard that a thatched hut was going to be built, they called a few people from the village and brought things over. Mu Shi was already waiting for them at the foot of the mountain, cut down the trees first, and lay the foundation later. Lu Ting wandered around for a while and asked, "How big is the thatched cottage?" "Let's build a 2-room one. It's more spacious, and it's convenient for people to move around in it, and you can put some things in it." Mu Shi thought for a while. "That's not difficult. With so many of us, it can be done in 3 or 4 days. Come on, the big guys are starting to work." Lu Ting clapped his hands to greet everyone to start. He turned around and saw Mu Yangling wandering around everywhere, and wanted to help, so he stepped forward and pulled him over, saying, "Okay, I don't need you here, go home quickly, your cousins will do." Seeing that there were so many of them, Mu Yangling really didn't need her, so he said, "Then I'm going back. What do you want to shout? I can hear it from the bottom of the mountain." The thatched hut was built next to the shed, about 10 steps away, with a ditch at the back, grass in front, and the river not far away. Mu Yangling felt that if the hut was warm enough, it would actually be nice to live here. As soon as the Mu family started construction here, the villagers knew that the house was used to watch rabbits. Some of those who wanted to do something to the rabbits stopped immediately, and some people planned to take advantage of the fact that the thatched house has not yet been built. Make a vote first, and then go away and not go back to Xingzhou Mansion. Even if the little general knows that they did it, there is nothing he can do. Anyway, Xingzhou Prefecture has been in drought for several months now, and everyone said that there is no way to survive. Instead of waiting to follow the victims to flee south, it is better to collect some money and go south now. They don't have the ability to go into the house and steal money. Could it be that they can't steal rabbits in the field? That's really stupid. After thinking about it, the 5 of them quietly came to Mu's pastoral area in a dark and windy night. All of them were adults, and they didn't need boards, So they took 2 steps back and jumped across the ditch, but one of them accidentally fell, caught the net, and made a loud noise. Speak softly, what if someone finds out? It's pitch black, and we're the only ones in the whole field. Even if you shout here, no one else can hear you. Can anyone be there? Okay, stop arguing, hurry up, we have to run for our lives after taking the things. This rabbit has to be shot tomorrow, and we will go our separate ways after taking the money. Don't waste your time now. The 5 reached the first shed in the dark, and were about to pry open the door when Thief felt his right shoulder being patted, and he turned impatiently to the right with a shovel and shouted, "I'm opening the door, don't bother me." After shouting, I vaguely felt that there was no one on the right side. Although the night was dark and the wind was high, there were still dots of starlight. It was not so dark that you couldn't see your fingers. You could see some vague outlines. The thief himself was the right is gone. He turned his head stiffly to look at the thief B on the left, and asked, "Did you shoot me just now?" Thief B said impatiently, "Who shot you?" "Brother, will you open the door? If you don't come, let me come." Thief swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and said after a while, "It's okay, I'm familiar with this skill, I'll do it." As he said that, he reached out to grab the lock, but when his hand touched the lock, his right shoulder was patted again. Suddenly, he quickly turned his head to the right, but there was still no one on the right. This time Thief panicked. He turned his head so fast just now, how could the person who shot him move so fast? Unless that's not human. Thief A's face was pale, and he said tremblingly, "Old man, second child, we may have run into a ghost." Thief B rolled his eyes and said, "Brother, if you don't open the door again, let me come. There are only 5 of us here. Where did the ghost come from? We are all big men, full of yang energy. That ghost is looking for death. He'll come to us. Come on, give me the shovel, and I'll open the door." Bandit B was about to snatch the shovel from Bandit A's hand when he heard Bandit C say, "There are 5 of us? Then why do I see there are 6 of us?" Bandit B froze, and Bandit A stiffly turned back to look at the third child. "Sir, you dare to lie, be careful, second brother, I will beat you up." The thief D tremblingly pointed at the back of the thief B and said, "Second brother, third brother didn't lie to you, then, what is behind you?" He. As soon as the words fell, there were a few chuckles behind Thief B, and the 5 of them yelled, "Ah!" Thief A threw away the shovel in his hand, turned around and ran, unable to see clearly in the dim light, and bumped his head against the wall. Because of the excessive force, he rolled his eyes and passed out. Thief B fell limply to the ground, stared at him with wide eyes, and was so frightened that saliva flowed out of his mouth. The remaining 3 wanted to run away. Mu Yangling kicked them one by one. The one who ran away was kicked in the chest by Mu Shi, who was standing in the corner before taking a few steps, and flew out. Mu Yangling just lit the lantern, and the incontinent thief B was so frightened that he saw that it was a ghost, so he yelled, "Oh my God," and passed out. Mu Shi came back with the man who was halfway running, slapped his daughter on the head, and said with a straight face, "Nonsense, what should I do if I scare people to death?" He wanted to teach them a lesson, but he didn't want to kill people. He had killed people, and he didn't regard human life as worthless because of it. Instead, he felt that life was more precious because of the experience. Life is too fragile, so we should cherish it even more. Mu Yangling stuck out his tongue and said, "I didn't expect them to be so careless. Next time I won't dare." Isn't it just standing on the left and shooting the right? When she was in elementary school, she could tell the strength and direction, so this person is a bit stupid. Mu Shi and Mu Yangling squatted here for 2 nights, and finally caught him. Mu Shi and Mu Yangling tied up several people, and then carried them home, directly strung them into a string and tied them to the big tree in front of the door. When the 5 people woke up, it was almost dawn. The 5 people looked at each other with teary eyes, and then moved their bodies to try to untie the rope, but because they were tied together, if one pulled the other would be torn. Well, after a while, the 5 of them rolled into a ball, and they didn't even have the strength to move. The 5 of them could only look at the gate of Mew's house with teary eyes in a daze. When the rooster crowed for the 3rd time, there were sounds in the village one after another, and every household started to get up. The Who family who was closest to Mew's house opened the door, and habitually looked towards Mew's house, and saw 5 people lying on the ground. Personal. The old man who rubbed his eyes, and then he was sure that he read it correctly. There were indeed 5 strong men lying on the ground, with cloth strips stuffed in their mouths. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 192. Mu Yangling had a good night's sleep, and didn't open his eyes until the sun was shining on his buttocks. As soon as he opened his eyes, he met Bowen's shining eyes. Mu Yangling stretched out his hand and slowly pushed his face away, turned over, and continued to sleep. "Sister," Bowen yelled, pressed directly on Mu Yangling, and yelled in her ear, "Sister, get up soon, it's so lively outside." Mu Yangling opened his eyelids and asked, "How lively?" "A lot of people gathered around the door of our house, and there were many people kneeling outside, begging Father to let those people go, but Father ignored him and didn't allow us to go out." Mu Yangling yawned, got up slowly, and said, "Father is waiting for me." Mu Bowen straightened his chest and said, "Father said I'm a man in the family, let me discuss with you how to deal with this matter." "Then what do you say?" Mu Yangling asked while putting on his clothes. Without even thinking about it, Mu Bowen said, "Send the officials, they are all thieves, send the officials to sentence." "No, think again." Mu Bowen frowned, "Why is it wrong?" "Sir, the thieves and thefts are all handled by the government arrest department. Because there are human beings in the government, and because the government is not the biggest in this place." Mu Yangling sat cross-legged in front of Bowen, and said, "Sister, I ask you, will the government definitely sentence this thief if he is sent to the government?" "Of course they got caught. Father is from a military family, and those people are from civilian households. There are differences in the lawsuits between the 2 parties. It was my father and I who arrested them. They can also say that we kidnapped people indiscriminately, or they can justify that they just passed by our pastoral area. Their families are willing to give some money. Well, even if the world is not so dark, we met a good official who is honest and upright, and he sentenced the other party according to the law. We are naturally happy, but their families also hate us. We don't need to care about this. At most, my sister will pay more attention when you go in and out in the future, but we catch these thieves not to send them to the government, but to stop thieves from our pastoral areas, and tell them that even if Father is not at home, the family is also capable of protecting themselves and the property of the Mu family." Mu Yangling patted Bowen's head seriously and said, "The focus of this move is to deter, not punish. Otherwise, Mu Yangling would not let those people go so easily, and the government must send them away. But not this time. The blog post seems to understand but not understand." Mu Yangling jumped off the Kong and said, "Okay, you can stay with my sister for a while, the cousins should have been working in the field, and you can invite the cousins here in a while, and let the big guys have a look. Although my Mu family has a single surname in these 10 miles and 8 villages, there are quite a few relatives and friends, and I have support." Bowen responded loudly, "Hey." After Mu Yangling washed up slowly, he ate breakfast slowly, and then sat on a chair to drink tea. Xu Wanyang took the time to look up at her daughter, and couldn't help but pursed her lips into a smile when she saw her behavior. The child was calm, and she wasted all her worrying this morning. Mu Shi was sitting in the room watching his son's homework. Seeing that his daughter was ready, he nodded slightly, "Since it's ready, let's go out and deal with it. Dad will wait in the room." "Father, just watch," Mu Yangling took Mu Bowen's hand and went out. The people kneeling on the ground outside the door were all the family members of the 5 families who heard the news and rushed over to intercede. They wanted to let the 5 people on the ground go first, but they didn't have the guts. There were many city guards outside the door. The people in Tun, if they dared to untie the rope, the 5 people would be beaten to death with one kick. Killing a thief is not worth your life. Mu Yangling opened the door, and the person kneeling outside looked up and saw Mu Yangling was disappointed, but he still knelt and kowtowed. "Little girl, I beg you, let your father and mother come out and tell us in a word. Our head of the family knows that he is wrong, and he will never dare again, so please don't report it to the officials." Mu Yangling said, "It's useless to ask my father or my mother for this matter. I am in charge of my family now, and this matter is also under my control. If you run into my rabbit shed in the middle of the night to steal rabbits, I will pay you back. I didn't ask you to settle accounts, but you came to the door, and the news is quite well informed." The people kneeling on the ground were stunned, and the surrounding villagers shouted loudly, "Auntie, A Ling is right, the Mu family is now in charge of A Ling girl. It is useless for you to beg her parents, you have to beg her." Hearing this, the wife of Thief burst into tears. She climbed up and wanted to hug Mu Yangling's leg, but she didn't care if she was dodged, and she cried, "Ms. the head of the family, he is usually very honest, but he was deceived by Lard last night, please forgive him this time, he will never dare again, we all depend on him for our lives, if you send him to the court, we will not be able to live." "Yes, yes, the head of my family is also like this." The family members of the other 5 families all cried out. Mu Yangling said, "There are also old and young in my family, you still have a man to rely on, my father works in the military camp, he may not come back once in a few months, why don't you pity me? Does that rabbit belong to my family? It belongs to the little general and Mr. Fan. If we lose the things of the little general and Mr. Fan, can our family survive? I pity you. You pity me too." Mu Yangling snorted coldly, "If you want me to let them go, it's impossible. If you let these 5 go, I don't know how many thieves are waiting for you. Anyway, if you steal something, you will run away. If you leave here and change your name, it will be another crime. A good man, the roots of our Mu family are rooted here. Today, my aunt and grandma, I will try to make an example to others." The faces of Bandit A and the others changed drastically, and they yelled whoa at Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling stepped on the man under his feet, and hummed, "Now I know I regret it. Why did you go so early? I don't think your daughter-in-law's clothes look like they are too poor to uncover the pot. Why are you becoming a thief? You are bullying our Mu family, right? Let everyone know that although our Mu family has only one surname in these 10 miles and 8 villages, all the in-laws of my Mu family are here. Bowen, go get the uncles, invite me here, so that these things with dog eyes can see if our Mu family is easy to bully." "Hey," Bowen responded loudly, turned around and was about to run, but at the entrance of the village, he ran into Lu Ting and the others who had brought someone home. It turned out that Lu Ting brought a few cousins over early in the morning to help build thatched huts, but seeing the situation in Chinguthun from a distance was not right, and after inquiring, he found out that the Mu family recruited thieves last night. Lu Ting didn't even think about it. He said to Lu Yuan, "Run back and tell my father, bring a few more people over, and I'll help Shitu. Their family is weak here, so they can't be bullied." Upon hearing this, Lu Yuan immediately ran back to call for someone. However, Lu Daqian felt that relying on these few families alone would not work, so he went to find Lu He's dignitary. "Let's go to all the young and strong members of our Lu family who are still at home. Shitu is not mean to our Lu family, as it should be. I will go to every house to call people.